Commander Jin pressed his face against the cold metal of the observation window. The stars looked the same as they did 50 years ago, but everything else had changed. Earth was gone. Not destroyed completely, but turned into something that could no longer support life. The hegemony had made sure of that. He remembered the day it happened. He was just a young soldier then, barely 20 years old. The alien ships had appeared in Earth's sky like dark clouds. 12 different species, all working together, all agreeing on one thing: humans were too dangerous to live. They called humans a plague, a virus that would spread across the galaxy if not stopped. The attack lasted 3 days. Cities turned to glass, oceans boiled away, mountains melted. By the end, Earth looked like a broken marble, all cracked and lifeless. Most humans died in those 3 days. The lucky ones died quickly. Jin and maybe a million others escaped. They hid in space stations, in asteroid mines, in the forgotten corners of the galaxy. For 50 years, they had been running. For 50 years, they had been hunted like animals. Dr. Han walked up behind him, his footsteps quiet on the metal floor. Han looked older than his 60 years. They all did. Living in fear aged a person quickly. The test results are back, Han said quietly. Su's team completed their mission. Jin turned around. Han held a data pad in his shaking hands. The doctor had been working on something secret for months. He called it the Enhancement Project. Jin did not understand all the science, but he knew it was important. Tell me, Jin said. Han activated the pad. A video began to play. It showed Su and her 3-person team floating in space near a hegemony patrol ship. They wore special suits that Han had designed. The suits were black and seemed to bend light around them. Watch this, Han whispered. On the screen, the 4 humans moved toward the alien ship. They moved differently than normal humans. Faster, more controlled. Seemed to know exactly where each other was without talking. Jin watched as they attached something to the ship's hull. The alien ship exploded silently in the vacuum of space. How? Jin asked. Genetic modifications, Han explained. We have been studying alien technology for 50 years. We learned how their weapons work, how their ships move, how their bodies function. But more importantly, we learned about ourselves. Han swiped to another screen. It showed brain scans and DNA charts that Jin could not read. Humans are different from other species, Han continued. The aliens are smarter than us in many ways. They live longer, they're stronger, their technology is better. But they have one weakness. What weakness? They think like machines. They follow patterns. They make plans and stick to them no matter what happens. What humans? We adapt. We change. We learn from failure. Shin looked back at the video. Stu's team was already gone, disappeared into the darkness of space. The alien ship was just debris now. How many humans have you modified? Jin asked. 50 so far. All volunteers. The process is dangerous. Not everyone survives it, but those who do, double quotes. They are becoming something new, something the aliens never expected. Jin thought about this. For 50 years, humanity had been on the run. They had been weak, scattered, afraid. The hegemony treated them like pests to be eliminated. Patrol fleets would arrive at human settlements and destroy everything they found. There was no negotiation, no mercy, no hope. But maybe that was changing. What did the modifications do exactly? Jin asked. Enhanced reflexes, better coordination, improved healing. Most importantly, we have created a way for modified humans to communicate without using technology. They share thoughts, feelings, and instincts. When one person in a team sees something, they all see it instantly. Jin understood now why Sue's team had moved so perfectly together. They were not for separate people anymore. They were like fingers on the same hand. K. The aliens hunt us with advanced computers and sensors, Han continued. K. But they cannot predict what we will do because we do not follow logical patterns. We follow our instincts. And our instincts are telling us to survive. Through the window, Jin could see other parts of Outpost Delta. Families lived in small rooms carved into the asteroid. Children played in the corridors, their laughter echoing off metal walls. These people had never seen Earth, never walked on grass or felt rain. They had been born in hiding. How long before we can modify more people? Jin asked. 6 months for the next group, maybe longer. We have to be careful. If the hegemony learns what we are doing, ... Jin nodded. If the aliens discovered that humans were changing, becoming stronger, they would send everything they had to finish the job. The hegemony had 12 species and millions of ships. Humanity had 1 million people hiding in the dark. But for the first time in 50 years, Jin felt something he had almost forgotten. Hope. The aliens thought they had one. They thought humans were finished, just waiting to die out completely. They were wrong. Humans were learning to be more than human. And that scared Jin almost as much as it excited him. Captain Lee floated in the darkness outside Research Station Fox 9. His breathing was slow and steady inside his helmet. Behind him, 3 other modified humans waited for his signal. They had been floating here for 6 hours, completely still, watching the alien station rotate slowly against the stars. 3 years had passed since Dr. Han's first successful modifications. Lee was part of the second group to undergo the enhancement process. The changes had been painful. For 2 weeks, he had felt like his body was tearing itself apart and rebuilding. But when it was over, he could do things that normal humans could not do. He could feel his teammates without looking at them. Min was behind him and to the left, her breathing calm and ready. Bach was below, his attention focused on the station's weapon systems. Jun was above, scanning for patrol ships. Lee did not need to talk to them or use hand signals. They shared the same thoughts now, like 4 parts of one mind. The station looked peaceful. Bright lights shone from its windows. Lee knew that inside, alien scientists were working on new weapons, new ways to hunt down the remaining humans. This station had been responsible for developing the scanning technology that found human settlements. 15 colonies had been destroyed because of research done in this place. Lee felt anger rise in his chest, but he controlled it. Anger made mistakes. He had learned this the hard way during his training. Through their shared connection, Lee sent a simple message to his team. It was time. They moved together like dancers. No words, no signals, just perfect coordination. Their suits were black and absorbed light, making them nearly invisible against space. Han had designed the suits using alien technology. It improved them with human creativity. The station's hull was thick metal designed to stop normal weapons. But Lee's team carried tools that the aliens had never seen before. Bach attached a small device to the outer wall. The device looked simple, like a metal disc, but it contained technology that took human scientists 3 years to develop. Disc began to vibrate at a frequency that matched the metal of the hull. Within minutes, it had created a hole large enough for a person to crawl through. No alarms sounded. No sensors detected the breach. Hole looked like it had always been there. Lee went first, pulling himself through the opening into the station's outer corridor. The artificial gravity grabbed him and pulled him down to the floor. His enhanced body adjusted instantly to the change. Behind him, his teammates followed. The corridor was empty, but Lee could hear alien voices echoing from deeper in the station. His enhanced hearing picked up conversations in 3 different alien languages. He understood parts of what they were saying. Over the past 3 years, modified humans had been studying alien languages, cultures, and psychology. Min pointed down the corridor. Her enhanced senses had detected the location of the main research lab. They moved forward like shadows, their feet making no sound on the metal floor. The first alien they encountered was a technician working alone in a storage room. The creature looked like a large insect with 4 arms and compound eyes. It was checking inventory on a datapad when Lee's team surrounded it. The alien opened its mouth to scream. But Jun was already there, one hand covering the creature's mouth, the other holding a small device against its neck. The device sent electrical signals into the alien's nervous system, paralyzing it without causing permanent damage. Through their connection, Lee felt his team's satisfaction. They had practiced this move hundreds of times, but never on a real target. It had worked perfectly. They continued deeper into the station. More aliens appeared, but Lee's team dealt with each one the same way. Silent, fast, precise. The creatures never had time to sound an alarm or call for help. The main research lab was behind a heavy door that required 3 different security codes to open. But Jun had been watching the aliens for hours through hidden cameras. He had memorized the codes by watching the researchers enter them. Inside the lab, 5 alien scientists worked at computer terminals. They were studying data about human settlements, planning new attacks. On the screens, Lee could see images of human children marked as targets for elimination. The anger rose in his chest again, but this time he did not fight it. He let it flow through the connection to his teammates. They felt his rage and shared it. Together, they moved. The aliens never knew what hit them. One moment, they were working peacefully. The next, they were unconscious on the floor. Lee's team had moved so fast that the security cameras barely caught them, but they were not here to kill. They were here to learn. Men began copying data from the computers while Bach set up recording equipment. Jun watched the corridors for more aliens. Lee studied the unconscious scientists, using a device that Han had created to scan their brains and download their memories. The information they gathered was incredible. The aliens had detailed maps of human hiding places throughout the galaxy. They knew about supply routes, communication networks, and defensive positions. But more importantly, Lee's team learned about alien weaknesses, fears, and secret technologies. When they were finished, they left the station the same way they had entered. The aliens would wake up hours later with no memory of what had happened. They would find that some data files were missing, but they would not know how or why. Back at the hidden base, Dr. Han studied the recordings with excitement. For the first time in 50 years, humans had struck back without being detected. More importantly, they had proven that the enhanced modifications worked better than anyone had hoped. Commander Jin watched the footage of Lee's team moving through the station. They looked like ghosts, like creatures made of shadow and silence. They are starting to fear us, Han said with satisfaction. The patrol fleets that have disappeared, the silent attacks on their stations. The aliens are beginning to realize that something has changed. Jin nodded. Fear was a powerful weapon. For 50 years, humans had lived in fear of the hegemony. Now it was time for the aliens to experience that same terror. Admiral Vex stood in the center of the hegemony High Council chamber, his 4 arms moving in agitated patterns. The 12 species that ruled the galaxy sat in a circle around him, their various forms of eyes all focused on his report. Some had multiple heads, others had tentacles instead of limbs, but they all shared the same expression of growing concern. 2 more worlds have gone silent, Vex announced, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. Kepler 186b and Proxima Centauri c. No distress signals, no evidence of attack, no survivors. Just empty space where our colonies used to be. A creature that looked like a walking tree raised one of its branch-like arms. Navigation errors, it suggested. Equipment failure. These things happen. Vex's main head shook violently while his secondary head displayed images on the chamber's central screen. Look at these patterns. 12 patrol fleets missing in the past year. 17 research stations attacked. Supply convoys destroyed with surgical precision. This is not random equipment failure. The images showed destroyed alien ships, but something was wrong with the wreckage. The ships had not been blown apart by massive weapons. Instead, they looked like they had been carefully taken apart, piece, by someone who understood exactly how they worked. The humans, whispered a creature with 6 eyes arranged around its head. But that is impossible. Crush them. 50 years ago, they are primitive, scattered, weak. Vex activated another set of images. Security footage from various attacks played on the screens. The footage was grainy and unclear, but it showed dark shapes moving with impossible speed and coordination. The shapes looked human, but they moved like nothing the Council had ever seen before. These are not the same creatures we fought 5 decades ago, Vex said. They have changed, evolved. They study our technology, learn our languages, understand our psychology better than we understand theirs. Far across the galaxy, in a hidden asteroid base called Omega, Commander Jin sat at a round table with holographic projections of his cell leaders. The technology was stolen from the hegemony and improved by human engineers. The projections looked so real that Jin could almost forget his people were scattered across thousands of light years. Kim's projection flickered slightly as she adjusted her transmitter. Endor sector is clear, she reported. We hit 6 military installations and captured enough equipment to supply 3 more cells. No survivors to report our presence. Jin nodded. Kim's team specialized in lightning-fast raids on isolated outposts. They struck without warning, took what they needed, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Her people had perfected the art of being ghosts. Park's image was clearer. His base had better equipment. Supply convoy operations are exceeding expectations, he said with satisfaction. He intercepted 3 major shipments near Kepler 442, food, weapons, medical supplies. More importantly, we captured their shipping schedules for the next 6 months. This was the key to everything. For 50 years, humans had been forced to live on scraps, stealing what they could find. Now, they were taking what they needed directly from hegemony supply lines. The aliens were being forced to feed the very people they were trying to exterminate. But the most important report came from Yoon. Her projection showed a young woman with tired eyes and steady hands. She ran the intelligence network that had become the nervous system of the human resistance. Communication intercepts are paying off, Yoon said. We have cracked their primary encryption protocols. You can now listen to their military communications, their government meetings, even their personal conversations. Jin leaned forward. This was what he had been waiting to hear. Tell me about their state of mind, he said. Yoon smiled, but it was not a happy expression. They are afraid, Commander. Really afraid. Patrol schedules have been increased by 300%. Their military commanders are requiring escort ships for routine supply runs. Its colony governors are requesting additional security forces. She activated a recording. Alien voices filled the room, speaking in their various languages. Yoon had learned to understand most of them over the past few years. This is from yesterday, she explained. A conversation between 2 hegemony admirals. The translation appeared as text on their screens. The alien officers were discussing patrol routes, but their tone was nervous, almost panicked. They talked about strange sensor readings, ships that appeared and disappeared, attacks that came from nowhere. They are jumping at shadows, Jan continued. Their sleep cycles are disrupted. Their efficiency is dropping. Some of their outer colonies are requesting evacuation because the settlers are too frightened to continue living there. Jin felt a cold satisfaction spread through his chest. For 50 years, human children had woken up screaming from nightmares about alien ships. Human parents had stayed awake at night, listening for the sound of approaching engines. Thou. Aliens were experiencing the same terror. They call us the Shadow Plague in their internal communications, Yoon added. They know we are out there, but they cannot predict where we will strike next. It is driving them to paranoia. Park's projection raised a hand. My scouts report that some hegemony worlds are building underground bunkers. They are preparing to hide from us the same way we hid from them. The irony was not lost on anyone in the room. The hunters were becoming the hunted. Jan stood up and looked at each of his cell leaders. These people had been children when Earth burned. They had grown up in hiding, always afraid, always running. But they were not children anymore. They had become something their enemies had never expected. Phase 3 begins tomorrow, Jen announced. We have spent 3 years learning to be invisible. Now it is time to become inevitable. The projections nodded in unison. Across the galaxy, human cells prepared for the next stage of their war. They were no longer just surviving. They were winning. And the hegemony was finally beginning to understand what they had created when they tried to destroy humanity. They had not killed a species. They had forged a weapon. Admiral Vex stood on the bridge of his flagship, K, the Eternal Dominance, watching 10,000 hegemony warships emerge from hyperspace in perfect formation. This was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Ships from all 12 species floated in organized rows, their weapons powered and ready. New Sol colony detected, his sensor officer reported. Population approximately 50,000 humans. No significant defensive structures visible. Vex nodded with satisfaction. Intelligence reports indicated this was one of the largest remaining human settlements. Destroying it would send a message to any survivors hiding elsewhere in the galaxy. The hegemony had tolerated the human problem long enough. Begin orbital bombardment, Vex commanded. Complete sterilization. Leave nothing alive. But as his weapons officers prepared to fire, something strange appeared on the sensors. Small objects were moving among the asteroid field that surrounded the colony. At first, they looked like space debris, but their movement patterns were too organized, too purposeful, the sensor officer said, confusion in his voice. I am detecting multiple contacts. They appear to be ships, but they are not showing up clearly on our scans. Before Vex could respond, the first explosion rocked his fleet. A hegemony destroyer simply vanished in a ball of fire. Then another. Then 3 more, all destroyed within seconds of each other. Where are the attacks coming from? Vex shouted. His tactical officer was frantically working at his station, trying to track the enemy vessels. I cannot get a clear reading. The ships appear for a few seconds, fire, then disappear again. It is like they are made of shadow. On the main screen, Vex watched in horror as his perfect formation began to fall apart. Human ships were emerging from hiding places throughout the asteroid field. They moved unlike anything he had ever seen. Instead of the straight lines and predictable patterns that military ships normally followed, these vessels twisted and turned like living creatures. More disturbing was their coordination. Thousands of human ships moved as if controlled by a single mind. When one group attacked from the left, another group would simultaneously strike from the right. When hegemony ships tried to retreat, human vessels would appear exactly where they were going, cutting off their escape routes. How are they doing this? His communications officer screamed as another squadron disappeared from the sensors. How do they know our every move before we make it? 50 light years away, in the hidden command center of the human flagship Shadow of Earth, Admiral Jin watched the battle through the eyes of thousands of his pilots. The bio-neural network that connected all modified humans allowed him to see the entire battlefield at once. Every human ship was like a finger on his hand, responding to his thoughts instantly. Dr. Han stood beside him, monitoring the networks. "Performance, coordination is perfect," he reported. "No communication delays, no confusion. They are fighting as one organism." Jin smiled coldly. 50 years ago, the hegemony had taught humanity a lesson about power. The strong survive, the weak die. But they had made one critical mistake. They had assumed that individual strength was the only kind that mattered. Humans had learned something different. Individual weakness could become collective strength. 1,000 humans thinking together could outsmart the most advanced alien computer. 1,000,000 humans working as one could become unstoppable. "Captain Lee, take your squadron through Vector 7, Jin commanded through the neural link. He did not need to speak aloud or use radio communications. His thoughts flowed directly to Lee's mind, along with tactical information and emotional support. Lee's response came back instantly. Not in words, but in pure understanding. His ships moved like a school of fish, flowing around hegemony vessels and striking at their weak points with surgical precision. Back on the eternal dominance, Admiral Vex was beginning to panic. Half his fleet was gone, destroyed by an enemy he could barely see. His remaining ships were scattered and confused, their formations broken. "Sir, we should retreat," his tactical officer suggested. "Regroup and analyze their tactics." "No," Vex snarled. "We have them outnumbered. We just need to adapt our strategy." But adaptation was exactly what humans did best. Every time the hegemony tried a new tactic, the human ships would counter it within seconds. It was as if they could read the aliens' minds, predicting every move before it happened. Captain Min's squadron demonstrated this perfectly as a group of hegemony cruisers attempted to form a defensive circle. Her ships appeared inside the formation before it was complete. The alien vessels found themselves firing at each other while human ships slipped away untouched. Park's heavy assault group showed different skills. His ships, modified with captured hegemony weapons, went head-to-head with the enemy's largest warships. But instead of fighting fair battles, they used swarm tactics. Dozens of small human vessels would surround a single large alien ship, attacking from every direction at once. The bioneural network allowed perfect timing. Every human pilot knew exactly when to fire, when to retreat, when to advance. They fought with the precision of a symphony orchestra, each part contributing to a greater whole. "This is impossible," Vex muttered as he watched his flagship's escort vessels explode around him. "They are just humans, primitives. How can they fight like this?" Through the neural network, Jin felt his people's confidence growing. For 50 years, they had lived in fear of the hegemony's superior technology and numbers. Now they were proving that intelligence and coordination could overcome raw power. "All units," Jin commanded, his thoughts flowing to every human ship in the battle. "Begin Phase 4. Show them what we have become." The human vessels changed their tactics again. Instead of hit-and-run attacks, they began herding the remaining hegemony ships into a smaller and smaller area. Like wolves hunting deer, they cut off escape routes and forced their enemies into a killing zone. Admiral Vex realized, with growing horror, that he was not fighting a battle anymore. He was being hunted. The predators had become prey, and the prey had learned to be perfect killers. 6 months after the Battle of New Sol, the galaxy had become a different place. On the hegemony capital world of Zentara Prime, a young alien child named Kix walked through the underground tunnels that had become their new home. Above ground, the great cities still stood, but few dared to live in them anymore. Kix's parent, Elder Zol, hurried the child along the metal corridors. Emergency lights cast strange shadows on the walls. Other alien families moved past them, carrying bags and possessions, all heading deeper underground. Why do we have to live down here? Kix asked, his 3 eyes blinking in confusion. Why can't we go outside and play like we used to? Zol's 4 arms wrapped protectively around the child. Akudi explained to someone so young. Kud. He made Kix understand that the rulers of the galaxy now lived in fear. There are hunters in the dark spaces between stars, Zol whispered. They watch and wait. They remember things that happened long ago, and they want revenge. What kind of hunters? Kix pressed. Zol looked around nervously before answering. Even in the underground tunnels, he was afraid to speak too loudly. Humans, he said. They were weak ones, so we tried to destroy them. But we failed, and now they have become something terrible. The child did not understand, but Zol remembered. He had been a young soldier 50 years ago when the hegemony attacked Earth. It had seemed so easy then. Humans had primitive weapons and divided governments. They fought among themselves more than they fought their enemies. The hegemony expected the war to last maybe a few weeks. Instead, it had lasted 3 days. Earth was turned to glass and ash. Billions of humans died. The survivors scattered to the far corners of space, broken and defeated. Everyone assumed they would die out within a generation. Everyone was wrong, far above them. In the abandoned command centers that once controlled galactic trade, automated systems sent out the same reports every day. 3 more outposts had gone. Silent. 2 supply convoys had vanished without a trace. A research station had stopped responding to communications. Nobody bothered to investigate anymore. They knew what they would find. Empty buildings, disabled equipment, and no signs of struggle. The humans had learned to kill without leaving evidence, to destroy without making noise. On his flagship, the Shadow of Earth, Admiral Jin stood before a massive display showing the current state of the galaxy. Red dots marked hegemony territories. Each day, more red dots turned gray, indicating lost communications or abandoned colonies. His communication officer, Ne, approached with the daily intelligence briefing. She was one of the newer generation, born in space and raised in the resistance. To her, Earth was just a story told by older people. Transport Fleet Gamma 7 was attacked near the Vega system, she reported. No survivors, but they managed to send a partial distress signal before going dark. Jin nodded without emotion. It was just another number in a war that had become routine. His people no longer fought desperate battles for survival. Now they hunted with the patience of natural predators. Their shipping routes are becoming more predictable, Ne continued. They stick 2 heavily guarded corridors now, but that just makes them easier to track. The transformation was remarkable. 50 years ago, humans had been the most scattered species in the galaxy. Now they were the most organized. The bio-neural network connected every modified human across thousands of light years. Information flowed instantly between cells. Plans were coordinated with perfect timing. Sir, Ne said hesitantly, some of the cell leaders are asking if we should open negotiations. The hegemony is clearly defeated. Maybe it's time to discuss terms. Jin turned to look at her. Kay was young, but she had fought in dozens of battles. She had seen human children die from alien weapons and human families torn apart by hegemony raids. Still, she could think about mercy. What terms would you suggest? Jin asked quietly. Territorial divisions, trade agreements, maybe reparations for the damage to Earth. Jin walked to the observation window. Outside, space looked peaceful, but he knew that hundreds of human ships were moving through the darkness, invisible to alien sensors. His people had learned to become shadows, and shadows were everywhere. Do you know what the aliens told us? 50 years ago, Jan asked. They said the universe belongs to the strong. They said the weak deserve to die. They said humans were a disease that needed to be eliminated. He pointed to the star map. They burned our world. They hunted our children. They showed no mercy when we begged for peace. And now, when they are the ones who are weak and afraid, they want to negotiate. Nay was quiet for a moment. She understood what he was saying, but part of her still hoped for a different path. We could be better than they were, she suggested. Jin smiled, but there was no warmth in it. We are better. We don't torture prisoners or destroy entire worlds for fun. We simply remove threats, quietly and efficiently. We learned from the best teachers in the galaxy. Deep in the underground tunnels of Zentara Prime, young Kix finally fell asleep in his parents' arms. But his dreams were filled with dark shapes moving between stars, with ships that appeared and disappeared like ghosts, with humans who remembered everything and forgave nothing. Above ground, the great cities stood empty. The hegemonies, mighty fleets, stayed close to home, too afraid to venture into the deep space they had once controlled. Trade had collapsed. Communications were unreliable. The 12 species that had once ruled the galaxy now lived like prisoners in their own homes. The hunters had become the hunted. The apex predators now checked under their beds before sleeping. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, human engines hummed quietly, patient as death itself. The galaxy had learned a new truth. Humanity was no longer the weak species that could be bullied and destroyed. They had evolved into something far more dangerous than any alien had imagined. They were the reason the light stayed on at night, the reason doors were locked, the reason even the strongest predators no longer felt safe in the dark.